So, as we sit here in the aftermath and the fallout of the Nintendo Direct and people's reactions to the most recent Nintendo Direct, we take a look at all the games that were exciting and the ones that were maybe less exciting, everyone's differing opinions on all the stuff that showed up in the show, which is normal following a Nintendo Direct. But today I want to focus on easily the biggest missing piece and missing title from the Nintendo Direct that everyone has strong feelings about. I do as well, and that, of course, is Metroid Prime 4. So something that I found quite a bit surprising going into this Nintendo Direct in that 24-hour period between the announcement and the airing of the Nintendo Direct was just how many people were laser focused on seeing Metroid Prime 4 in this Nintendo Direct. Many people felt that this was the time for Nintendo to show us Metroid Prime 4, and they needed to see it happen. And again, you guys know, I'm the world's biggest Metroid fan, so I absolutely relate to that because I am dying to see this game. It's the thing keeping me going, so to speak, when it comes to the gaming hobby. But as I tweeted, I did not expect Metroid Prime 4 to show up in this Direct, and I'm surprised at just how many people did feel like there was a real chance at seeing that game. And while, of course, it was always a possibility, to me, when I just look at the writing on the wall, it did not feel like the time for them to show us that game. In fact, you can tell just how many people were disappointed or upset by this by the fact that in the 24 hours following the Nintendo Direct, so many different Metroid and Metroid Prime hashtags were trending on Twitter. It was insane, and many of them had over 10,000 tweets in the trending tab. It was a big deal. People were expecting it. People were disappointed it wasn't there. And again, I appreciate that as the world's biggest Metroid fan. And so it really does kind of show how focused people are on that game and the fact that people thought that this was the time for Nintendo to finally pull the veil back on Metroid Prime 4. Funnily enough, this does also include a couple of my buddies that I've gotten to know via YouTube over the years. Joey Ferris from Game Explain and Andre's Restart. Two of my very good friends and favorite people who I've kind of become closer to in the YouTube years of my life. And they also were very much hoping to see Metroid Prime 4 and very disappointed that it wasn't there. And so I'll remind you, my thought here was that I also would have loved to see the game there. I think it's a matter of expectation. Are you somebody who felt like Metroid Prime 4 was going to be shown? Or are you someone like me who didn't really expect to see it and therefore not really let down by the game's absence? I think the main point that I want to get across in this video conversation today is just my personal perspective here, and it's really just doubling down on what I've been saying for quite a while anyways, and that is that I think the earliest we will see Metroid Prime 4, and it's even basically my prediction on when we'll see it, is the end of this year. So I do think a 2023 reveal, or re-reveal I should say, of Metroid Prime 4, including a tease, hopefully including gameplay or cinematics, a sneak peek at what Samus herself will look like. Yeah, 2023, before this year is over, probably in the holiday around Christmas time, right at the end of the year, I think we will see it. And because that's just been my personal feeling, I think that's also why I didn't feel like we were going to see Metroid Prime 4 shown at this Nintendo Direct. Now, there are other things that feed into that, but that's really the main crux for me. I always expected it to be something shown near the end of the year. Of course, we can't talk about this anymore without also acknowledging the discussion that's existed around Metroid Prime 4 maybe being a cross-generational title that's going to release on the Switch and on the Switch 2, hopefully a launch day game. Now, I bring this up in these conversations often, but I'm going to say it again. I've been predicting Metroid Prime 4 as a cross-generational title for about 2 to 3 years. I already thought that was going to make sense and everything was going to line up in such a way based on the timing of it all that Prime 4 was probably going to be ready around the time the Switch 2 would be revealed and released, and so why wouldn't Nintendo choose to make that game either a cross-gen title or a next-gen only title? And I mean, I've doubled down on this so many times. This is basically a triple down now for me to say this. I think the game is going to be cross-gen for that exact reason. You get the huge install base of the Switch, people who've been waiting for it for years. It was essentially announced as a Switch title literally at the beginning of the Switch's life. So you get the opportunity to deliver on that promise from the reveal back in 2017 while also using it to hype up the next-gen console, hopefully showcase the power of that console, and make a next-gen version of Metroid Prime 4 that looks and plays and runs much better because of that power. And it's a win-win. It's good for the Metroid franchise, it's good for the Switch 2, and it's good for current Switch owners. And it's for that reason that I've said for years, and I'm saying again today, why I think Nintendo wasn't ready to show Metroid Prime 4 at this Nintendo Direct. I know in my soul, to my very bones, that Nintendo's plan is to not reveal Metroid Prime 4 until a Switch 2 is confirmed in some way, so that they can kind of be part of the same initial marketing cycle. Even if the Switch 2 is revealed first and then we don't see Metroid Prime 4 until sometime later, it could happen that way for sure. But simply because my prediction is Metroid Prime 4 is going to in some way be tied to the next-gen console, that they can't really show us that game or talk more concretely about its release date or its gameplay until they can also talk about the next-gen Switch 2 nature, hopefully, of that game. Again, this is all theory and speculation as a fan, but here's the thing. I'm not right with everything that I've predicted over the years, but I've been pretty darn spot on with a lot of these things as far as timing, and so I'm hoping that that continues with the Switch 2 stuff and with Metroid Prime 4. And the caveat I give every time I talk about this stuff, I could be wrong, and that's okay. I won't mind being wrong. I'll be sad because it means Switch 2 and Metroid Prime 4 might be farther off than I want, but I won't be mad about it. So when 2023 is over, if we haven't seen the Switch 2, if we haven't seen Metroid Prime 4, I'll talk about that then, and we'll have a chance to reorganize our thoughts and our predictions about where things will go in the future. But right here and now, I think the Switch 2 needs to be a real confirmed thing so that Nintendo can then comfortably talk about Metroid Prime 4, and that's all because I think Prime 4 will be tied in some way to the release of the Switch 2. In my opinion, over 4 years after Nintendo announced the reboot of that game with Retro Studios in January of 2019, that's the only explanation for why they've been completely silent. In my opinion, again, this is all part of the bigger, grander theories and speculation you guys have been hearing me spew out for 3 years, okay? But I feel good about this stuff. In my opinion, the reason for them being completely dead silent on this game in 4 years since the reboot is only because of the next-gen Switch 2 factor. I really do believe that if there was no Switch 2 kind of mumbo-jumbo being tossed in here with Metroid Prime 4, that in the 4 years since the reboot, they would have shown us the game. They would have given us a teaser or an update or something significant. I mean, they showed listen to me, I almost said Breath of the Wild 2. Holy smokes. They almost showed us what would eventually become Tears of the Kingdom. They showed us that via a teaser in in E3 of 2019, if I can get my dates right. Holy smokes. So what I'm trying to say is at E3 2019, 4 years before the game would eventually release, they were able to show us a teaser with cinematics, essentially, almost finalized cinematics of what was then Breath of the Wild 2, what eventually became Tears of the Kingdom many years later. They were able to show us in progress, in-game graphical stuff. You know, we saw what Zelda looked like, we saw footage of the game in some way, shape, or form 4 years before that game came out. And so if we look at that timeline, and then they gave us several teasers and trailers throughout the 4 years until it released. So if we look at that timeline, and we compare the same 4-year time span to Metroid Prime 4's reboot, why have they shown us nothing? In theory, if they could do that for Tears of the Kingdom, they should have been able to show us something for Metroid Prime 4. The fact that they haven't, again, comes back to my theory about the Switch 2. And I think because the Switch 2 is tied in some way to Prime 4, that's why they've been completely silent about it. Which, of course, brings us back to this last Nintendo Direct and why the game wasn't shown there. And so, at this point, the conversation becomes cyclical, and each idea feeds into the next idea. No Metroid Prime 4 to Nintendo Direct because they need the Switch 2 announced. The Switch 2 might be announced this year, and then we'll see Metroid Prime 4. And because of that, it wasn't at the Nintendo Direct, right? It's just a big circle. And so this is really why I think we have a missing Metroid Prime 4, right? I feel like the title of this video is going to be like the case of the missing Metroid Prime 4 or something kind of funny like that, because I truly think that that's what this situation is. And it's why so many people, in my opinion, mistakenly expected Metroid Prime 4 to be at this June Nintendo Direct. But because of all this stuff, to me, logically, I didn't expect it to show up because I could tell that this was not the time. Obviously, I wanted to be wrong, okay? Sometimes you make a prediction that goes against your own desires. Because if you read the room correctly and you analyze the situation accurately, you realize what you want might not be the thing that makes the most sense. And I've been feeling that way about Metroid Prime 4 for a couple of years now. And I definitely felt it in that 24 hours between the announcement of the Nintendo Direct and its airing the next day. I tweeted about this. Again, I put a tweet up saying, I know a lot of you guys are hoping to see Metroid Prime 4 tomorrow. I would not count on it. And that turned out to be correct because I just could tell that this wasn't the time, even though I wanted it to be the time. Every day I wake up, I want it to be the day that Nintendo has shown a trailer for Metroid Prime 4 and given us a release date or even a release window. I want that every morning I wake up and get out of bed, but I know it's not going to happen until they're ready. I think the earliest that will probably be is near the end of this year in 2023. And the good news is, if that's true, that's only like 6 months away, you guys. It's not that far off if that happens. If that doesn't happen, if the game is even farther off than I'm thinking, well, then that's a different situation, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But for now, I expect it at the end of this year. That's why we didn't see it at the Nintendo Direct, and I think we can all cool our jets. Nintendo is treating this game with care and love, and that's why the silence hasn't bothered me, because I know they're doing their best to make it the best it could be, and as a Metroid superfan, that's all I could ever want. So these are my thoughts on the case of the missing Metroid Prime 4.